I only have two words for you guys. Butt controls. Just like Kill La Kill, Trigger's brand new anime series, Darling in the Franxx, is very heavy on the sexual innuendo and metaphors, to a point where it becomes so blatant that honestly it's side-splittingly hilarious. This was a really fun episode which introduced a little bit more about what it means to actually pilot these things and how it's actually done. I had no idea that they were going to pilot these things by basically getting into a doggy-style position and using these joysticks which come out of the ass of the female pilot. It looks hilarious, and it's so obvious what they're going for. The fact that we have male and female teams that have to connect and come together to basically control these massive robots. I mean, the metaphors write themselves, but man, they just lay it on thick in this episode to a point where once you start to accept how incredibly strange and over the top it is, you might find yourself enjoying it. What I will say is, this is the type of anime series that, while that I do like it, I would be embarrassed if, like, my girlfriend walked into the room or something and, like, saw me watching like this. This is the type of anime that you don't want people to see you watching. You watch it in a dark corner by yourself, or with a group of really awesome friends. The point is, this is definitely an anime, I think, not for the uninitiated. I think it's for those who've been watching anime for a long time and can accept the over-the-top and ridiculous sexual quirks of a giant robot anime series, which is ultimately just a metaphor for the horniness of teenagers. So, with that being said, this episode right here was actually a lot simpler than the first one, and I appreciated that they managed to slow things down, introduce us to the other characters of the series, who unfortunately I can't tell you too much about, aside from the fact that some of them have distinctive character quirks. Like, there's this one girl who is super nice, there's this one fat kid who likes to eat a lot of bread, there's Ichigo's partner Goro, who takes everything in stride, there's Ichigo herself, who at first seems like she was going to be a part of this love triangle with Hiro and Zero Two, but by the end of this episode, you can see that apparently Hiro does not have what Ichigo wants. She cannot simply be satisfied by him, at least in the form of controlling a giant robot, yet it's all this weird metaphor for the fact that Hiro essentially can't get it up. Unless, of course, he's with Zero Two. That's the one who tempts him, of course, and brings out his best abilities. It's a funny episode that is, like I said, kind of a giant metaphor for sexual compatibility, but it's all combined with, like, really great production value as well. And we finally got to get a little bit of a mech action in this episode, where we got to see two mechs going up against one another, and like I said, we got to finally see how these things are actually piloted. There's this one character in the episode who, I'm not sure what his name is, but basically he's the bully. He completely hates Hiro for absolutely no reason, and wants nothing more than to get him kicked out or to beat him in a battle with the giant Franxx robots. And they do end up having like this big knockout fight at the end of the episode, except that Hiro is not going to be with Zero Two, he's going to be with Ichigo. They have to make sure that he can actually tune up and work with someone and not just Zero Two. And of course Ichigo decides to do it because she has the hots for him, and that's when we finally get to see how these robots work. And there were some subtle hints to that in the beginning of this episode, like even just like the normal controls of like the non-big giant robots, like the things that you grab onto, they're connected to something that quite literally looks like a giant ass. It's hilarious, but it's when they pilot them together that things get hilarious. Not to mention the actual suiting up process, which is basically, again, another excuse for lots of fan service. But I do like the little detail where apparently like the uniforms they wear are like sort of cybernetically painted on. It kind of reminds me of like the suit up sequence from G Gundam. But then they even like forcefully put like high heels on the women's feet. It's hilarious. And then they get into the robot and they get down on all fours and basically get ready for the pilot to take charge. These controls come up from their thighs, which go up over the girl's butt. They then hold on to it, and then when you look at all the various camera angles, it basically looks like they're having sex the entire time. The concept, however, is still interesting, with the female pilot basically tapping into the robot and being able to control sort of like its emotions and look. You can actually see like when they're actually emoting, you see that on the robot's face, whereas the person is also just the male is actually sort of just piloting the robot and using all the special abilities. It's how they're able to come together and do this. And like I said, it's all just a metaphor for like sexual inadequacy. It's hilarious because you have Ichigo, who at first starts to work really well with Hiro. They actually sync with one another. He dives deep into her mind, a la Pacific Rim, and they're able to control the robot. But suddenly the robot starts to crumble. It can't be used. And this is, like I said, kind of a metaphor for the fact that Hiro just is not compatible with Ichigo. Like I said, he's kind of a dead fuck, so to speak. So the computer don't lie. That's all I gotta say. If you guys got that reference, you guys are freaking incredible, by the way. But yeah, the episode ends with him proposing that when he was with Zero Two, they kissed one another, and that sort of like opened up something within him. And they actually do have a steamy kiss scene, which unfortunately doesn't really go anywhere. And the episode ends with the mock battle ending, no one really winning, and Ichigo sort of having like a resentful moment against Hiro, also being incredibly disappointed that the kiss that she was wanting didn't exactly go the way that she planned, and it didn't sort of play out the way that she saw it in her head. It's, I think, going to lead to some surprising drama in this series, which, against the backdrop of this crazy world with giant robots and monsters, can end up becoming something really classic. But for the most part, it's just a funny excuse for robots in hilarious sexual positions. So, what's the rundown on this episode of Darling in the Franxx? Butt controls. Just, I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't do much research going into Darling in the Franxx because I wanted to have like a fresh experience with it and to see how things were actually going to go down. And I'm not sure if they actually had like any previews for the anime that showed off like how the actual robots themselves are piloted. But man, when that was happening for the first time, I could not control my laughter. I was just like, this is really happening right now. I mean, they're putting these girls in skin-tight costumes with forced-on high heels and making them bend over to pilot a freaking robot. It amazes me how different the cultures of America and Japan are when it comes to this stuff. And to be honest with you, I'm not a prude or anything. I'm not against this stuff at all. I just think it's so hilarious how over the top they seem to go with it. Just like Kill La Kill, they're taking the taboo nature of the human body and they're putting it right in your face, and they're making sure that you feel kind of uncomfortable about it. But by doing that, we find ourselves becoming more comfortable with it, which is exactly what they were planning on in the first place. It's just like Kill La Kill. I remember when I first started watching that series, the reaction from people was that it was just too fanservice-y and too distracting and nothing good could come of it. And at first it was kind of distracting. There was just so much skin all over the place. But somewhere like halfway through, you start not even looking at that or paying attention anymore, and you just start looking at all of the crazy things that are going on in this world. I have a feeling that Darling in the Franxx is probably going to do the same thing. I think it's being handled a little more clumsy than Kill La Kill. Like I said, they don't try to hide the innuendo in this episode. They throw it right at you. And it's so frigging funny. As far as the characters themselves, I still think Hiro is just kind of a boring main character, to be perfectly honest. He just seems like a blank slate at the moment. And like I said, the metaphor even continues when all the other team members are training by themselves, and he comes out like from the bushes, and that one jerk character is like, "Oh, did you just finish rubbing one out by yourself?" Basically just saying that he has no one else to pilot with or, basically get down with in the giant robot. It's just freaking hilarious. I didn't expect that this series was going to be so heavy on that. Honestly, though, it's Studio Trigger. I should have seen this coming, to be perfectly honest. I can't wait to see overall where this is all going to be going, and hopefully these characters will evolve. Like, aside from the main character, we get to see more of the other students in this episode, and they're okay for the most part. Ichigo looked like she was going to be one of the more interesting characters, but I'd like to see how she's going to change after this episode. She comes across as very cold and uncaring, and Zero Two clearly is already still the most fun female character of the entire show. Her overall just over-the-topness is great, especially the way that she sort of subtly and passively aggressively taunts Ichigo at the beginning of the episode, getting her to actually pilot with Hiro. It was a fantastic moment, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more like that as the series goes on. As far as the animation goes, it's still really good. The design is crazy. I'm not sure how I feel about the look of the robots yet. I need to see more of them in action. They seem kind of weird and clumsy looking the way that they move, but they're still waiting to give us like that big ridiculous action scene, so I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt simply because it is Trigger. I would say it's not my favorite mecha design in the world, but like I said, we need to see more of it, and if it's anything like we see in the intro of the show, then I'm all for it. It looks really solid. So this was a stupid fun episode of Darling in the Franxx. Totally entertaining, filled with hilarious innuendos that you definitely need to check out. I'm giving this episode a 4 out of 5. I'd love to hear from you guys, however. What did you think of this episode right here? Did you enjoy all the fan servicey moments? Did you think it was just too frigging ridiculous? What do you hope to see from the rest of Trigger's brand new over-the-top anime series? Tell me all your thoughts, comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more anime reviews. Please like the video and share it with your friends. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay down there, baby.